Welcome to Machine Tool Maniacs, the podcast where machining, fabrication, entrepreneurship, and bringing ideas to life collide. Around here, every story is a success story. I'm Matt, a second-generation manufacturer who's been in the shop since I was in diapers, learning the tools, the trade, and the people behind it all. Nearly everything in our daily lives is passed through a CNC machine. And we're here to spotlight the makers turning raw material into reality. Whether you're dreaming big or building bigger, this is your inside track to making it happen. All righty, welcome back to the podcast. I have with me today, his name is Will Mund, and he is the owner of Greenlight Machinery. Say hi, Will.
How you doing?
So
happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on the podcast. I wanted to have Will on this podcast because he has a ton of insight. He's been in the industry for a really long time, and I'm going to give him some time here in a few minutes to introduce himself. And the primary focus of this episode is going to be that we are diving into looking for equipment, right? So whether you're buying used equipment or new equipment, like things to look for, things to focus on, where to put your energy, and where to make sure you're spending your money right. Give us an intro, Will.
Well, thanks, Matt. I appreciate that. So like you said, my name's Will Mund or William, whichever one works. And I started my career in machining. It's been, I think it was in 2011 when I started. So a little bit of my background. I grew up in a small town in northern Utah called Willard. My one grandfather ran a company drilling water wells, and he had a little machine shop where he would rebuild these pumps and whatnot. You know, just turning bronze bushings and cleaning up threads and some different stuff like that. But it caused me to have some interest in machining. And then when I got a little older, my dad was taking me to work with him at a place over in Logan, and they had an Amada CNC turret punch. And I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know what CNC was. And so once I saw that and I actually got to run some parts on it, and I was hooked. I've been a nerd for machines and stuff since I was real little.
And how old was that CNC punch? Like, was it old enough to be NC, or was it actually CNC?
Well, the predecessor to it that I saw was an NC, had a tape reader and like a 2-line interface on it, real old strip it turret punch. And then the one that I ran, let's see, I think I was probably, how old was I? I think I was like 12, 13, 14, somewhere right in there, 14 years old.
Yeah.
And it was running a Fanuc OI control on it. And the sheet metal shop manager was kind enough to let me actually take the manual, and I started reading through it. That's how much of a nerd I am. Give me the operating manual for a CNC turret punch, and I'll start going through it and going, oh, that's cool. What does that mean? What does that do?
Nice.
But that's what kind of got me a hook there. My senior year of high school, I took a machining class and got to run little Haas VF3 and made a coin, a business card holder that had a little slots in it or whatever for coins, and still have it actually. But that got me hooked on machining and just seeing how that works and some of the cool stuff you could do with it.
Cool.
So went to school at the Ogden Tech College and got 2 technical certificates and started working at a shop in Ogden called Innovative Precision, and it's just been in the industry ever since.
So how long were you in a shop before you started moving on to other avenues in the industry?
I spent, I think, right about 2.5 years, something like that, as a machinist. And then it just so happened that the Haas dealer, I knew the service manager, and I had a very good friend that was working as a service engineer for them.
Mm-hmm.
And when I when I left the one machine shop and went to the second one, he was real interested. He needed a service engineer, and he knew that I was pretty quick to pick up on stuff like that, and so he ended up reaching out to me. And after a few months of going back and forth, we got in came to an agreement, and he was able to talk to his boss and got me hired on as a service engineer at it was then it was called Moncton's Machine Tools.
Yeah.
Now it's Productivity Incorporated.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
then I worked.
what was what pushed you more towards getting into the service side as opposed to just being a machinist?
Well, to be completely honest, I'm kind of a crappy machinist.
Well,
and
I love the honesty.
and what I mean by that is I'm slow when it comes to. I don't have the ability to take a print or a part and look at it and be able to go, okay, in order to make this, I need to hold it this way and this way. And, this is how I'm going to design a fixture to hold this, or this is how I need to cut the soft jaws or whatnot. Like I'm really slow at that.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of that, I didn't do very well in the job shop I was in, um, trying to program the parts, do everything and get it done in a timely manner. And so I ended up spending the last few months at Innovative just doing production work, just load parts, unload parts, clean them, deburr them, that kind of thing. And I was not intellectually stimulated doing that.
You
Um,
know, I'm glad you kind of bring this up because I've been communicating on various social media platforms lately, and I see a lot of people in the comments talking about how they are somewhat dissatisfied in this career because they feel like they've found themselves just in a position where all they are just button pushers essentially. I think that's very good food for thought from you is that maybe there's other avenues in this industry, other places that you can go, right? Not everybody in this industry needs to be a programmer or a advanced setup guy or an automation expert, right? Like,
mhm.
and just like your example here, this is the perfect example of finding what interests you in this field and pivoting towards that. So I love that.
It's really been quite a fun thing because I've always been interested in how things work. And I love making parts. I love making chips fly. I actually have my own little Haas VF2 mill that I'll make parts for people on and whatnot.
Nice.
But and I've gotten better as a machinist, but I
Mhm.
think part of that is because of the exposure I've had to so many different shops and seeing fixtures that they've built and how they've designed things to do what they do. And so I think I've gotten better, but I would not consider myself a good machinist. But it's still fun to be around that. And I think honestly, you bring up that other people are expressing dissatisfaction because they are pushing buttons. I think that's kind of the I hate to say it this way, but I think that's where automation is really a key thing in our industry is because if you have somebody that's dissatisfied with what they're doing and they're getting bored or frustrated because they aren't learning more, they're just sitting there and being like a trained monkey.
Mhm.
Um, that's going to show in the work that they do, whether it's the deburring or they're not going to be as thorough at checking parts or whatnot. And so I think that's a great spot for automation to be is to do that loading and unloading as much as possible and make it to where people can uh, do things that are more fulfilling for them
Yeah,
in
free
the
up
industry.
bandwidth, I
Free
like
up
to
the
say.
bandwidth. Exactly.
That's my feeling about a lot of things in this industry, especially as technology advances and we start moving forward. So, give us a brief rundown of your career with Moncton and working on houses.
Well, I worked for Moncton's Machine Tools slash Productivity Incorporated. Did that for about 8.5 years, and I did service work. I started out doing service on machines, and then also got into doing applications, working with the sales team and working with customers, doing training and trying to solve more complex problems.
Nice.
I also had the opportunity to work not only on Haas, but I also got to work on some Makino machines and Citizen Swiss type turning centers and some Mianos, and so I got to see a lot of differences in how machine builders do stuff, different types of machines, different quality build of machines,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
it was a lot of fun. Um, after that point, I had an opportunity arise with Herco out of Indianapolis to try and start a dealership out here for them,
Hmm.
and I worked for them for about 18 months doing sales. And I'm going to put this out there, coming from the service background. Um, I got nothing but respect for a lot of the guys in our industry that do sales and they do it well. Um, because sales, it's a lot harder job than I I worked with the sales guys at Moncton's and
Hmm.
thought, oh, that's pretty cool. I can see where it's kind of a challenging deal, but then once I got out there and was trying to sell machines, it's like, oh, this is a ball buster. Because
Really.
I'd go in and I'd talk to guys and I'd think I had a great conversation, thought I was making some progress with them and
Hmm.
in terms of just trying to bring a valuable product to their shop. And I'd go and visit them, a few weeks later, see how they were doing and check in on them. And I find out that they've pulled the trigger on another machine, on another brand, and and like they didn't say anything, didn't even mention that they were looking or anything. And so I realized that, you know, being able to have that happen regularly, or, just having people brush you off or not even let you past the front desk if you can even get in the door. I had a few shops where I couldn't even get in the front door.
Hmm. Yeah, the
Um,
grass is kind of always greener on the other side, right? We all look at
yep.
something somebody else is doing. It's like, oh, that's easy.
Yeah, no, it's not. It is not. So, but I had that experience with Herco. Unfortunately, it didn't pan out quite the way either one of us wanted. Um, and so that's when when we parted ways, I pivoted toward Greenlight Machinery. That was what the name of the Herco dealership was going to be.
Hmm.
Um, but because Herco, they weren't helping me get it going, they turned everything over to me. So it's like, okay, well, I'm going to pivot and do what I know how to do and do relatively well, and that's fix machines. And so I restarted Greenlight Machinery and been doing that for about not quite 18 months now, doing service work
So, what is the
as my own thing.
primary objective of Greenlight Machinery?
Well, at this point in time, I focus on service and applications, trying to help my customers out. I know that different factors right now in our industry make it really hard to invest in new equipment. A lot of shops are wanting to keep older equipment going,
Exactly.
and so I'm
Yeah.
doing everything I can to help my customers that way. And to be quite honest, it's a little self-serving, because if that customer keeps those machines going and they eventually add more machines, it keeps me busy.
Hmm.
But I want to make
Exactly.
sure that they're as successful. I want to make sure that I contribute to their success.
So, is there anything that you would say you specialize in right now under your Greenlight Machining banner? Or are you just kind of a one-stop shop for all?
I will, being completely honest here, I'll give just about anything a stab, a good college try on it. But
Hmm.
I also, um, if it's something that I have no clue about, I'll be upfront and tell people it's like I don't know anything about that. I'll give it a shot if you want me to, but you may be better going to somebody who's got more experience with it, whether that's the dealer or another independent or something that they might know. Because the last thing I need to do is try and dig into something, fail miserably at it, and then end up having to have the dealer come in or whatever and work on it, and then the customer either I have to eat it and take the time and effort that I put in and just take that as a square kick in the shorts,
Hmm.
or I end up having to send a bill to the customer and then they have another bill from the other company, and so now they've got these two bills and everything that they have to deal with, the problem plus the downtime of the machine and whatnot. And I don't want to be the cause of something like that to my customers.
What is the advantage of a shop coming to you versus going to the dealer?
A lot of times dealers are, for lack of a better term, a lot of times dealers are stuck in only working on their own brands.
Mhm.
And so if you have a high mix, if you've got a shop that's got a high mix of machines of, builders, control brands, different stuff like that, it can be, you got to juggle multiple people. With me, I've got experience on Fanuc. I've got some Mitsubishi experience. I've got experience on Haas. I just got certified to be an authorized integrator for Fagor automation products, so their controls and feedback systems.
Mhm.
And so I'm not going to say I'm an expert in all of them. I'm very, very familiar with Haas controls, obviously, because I spent a huge portion of my career there. But I can come in and I can generally try and work on anything. And the other part of it is that I'm probably equally hated by all different manufacturers. So
Well, that's right, because you keep all that old junk running so they don't have to buy new stuff, right?
exactly.
Um, another thing, I guess I might be putting words in your mouth, but it's probably safe to say that you are more willing to think outside the box when it comes to fixing stuff and
Absolutely.
finding solutions and maybe sourcing parts not necessarily from the manufacturer, right? Whereas a
Yep.
dealership is probably just going to come in and say, hey, you got to buy this part from, XYZ manufacturer, and that's your only option. So,
Yep. A great example is that I've got a friend who had a tool changer cam box die on his machine, and it only had 7,500 tool changes or something on it. As
oh,
far as I
wow.
can tell, it's an internal problem.
Yeah.
Um,
Design flaw.
but the manufacturer doesn't sell any parts, doesn't even have an exploded parts diagram for it.
Hmm.
There's the manufacturer's solution is it's like, no, just buy a new one from us. Well, that's 10 grand for a one man shop. That's a huge chunk of money for him to have to deal with. Um, and so I've talked with a couple of my friends in the industry and told them what tool changer it is, and they're like, well, we might know where to source some parts for it are. And
Okay.
so we're exploring options there. But I don't know. You're right. Trying to source parts is I'm willing to go wherever to
That's
find the
awesome.
right stuff.
So, looking back on your career so far, what are some of the biggest lessons that you would say you've picked up along the way?
Um, the number one lesson I would say is be good to people, and not just the people that you work with or work for, but like my example. Part of it doesn't matter where I've worked. I've always tried to do the best job I can for whoever it was. And when I was working for the Haas dealer, I worked in a lot of shops, and I honestly spent a good chunk of my own personal time trying to help the customer and ensure that they were, you know, comfortable with it. If they had never run a Haas machine or whatever, there have been times that I've spent several hours outside of my work hours helping them get more familiar and comfortable with the control or with the machine, so that way they can be successful with it. And I've spent countless hours on the phone with people, just walking them through stuff, how to help them.
Well, it
And
shows, man. There's nothing but in the valley here. Nobody has nothing but good things to say about you. So,
well, thank you. And the reason I bring that up is not to toot my own horn, but more when Herco and I parted ways, it was, well, I'll come right out and say it. They fired me because I wasn't making enough sales for them.
mhm.
And I get it. There were a lot of financial factors, both with me and the arrangement we had with them, but also with their company and stuff that they had going on at the time. And I was out of town. I was up in Idaho Falls doing sales calls when I got that call.
Mhm.
And when that happens, I've got my wife and my kids, and all of a sudden it's like, crap, what am I going to do? How am I going to make sure that the mortgage is paid? I've got money to buy groceries and put food on the table. those are the things that are going through my head. And um, I called a couple of different machine shop owners that I knew, and I was asking them, saying, "Hey, do you guys need somebody even just to run parts, or need a button pusher just to keep stuff running?" And they're like, "Well, what's going on?" And I tell them what happened, and they're like, "Will, you're welcome in our shop. We can't pay you what you're worth, but man, we'll help you however we can." And the interesting part of it was that they not not too long after they bring that up, they're like, "Well, what's going to happen with Greenlight?" And I've told them I was trying to figure out what to do, and I says, "Well, I think I might take and just spin Greenlight up as a service company,
Mhm.
fixing machines." And out of the 4 or 5 guys I called, every single one of them said, "If you do that, you'll be the guy that we call to come and do service for us."
That's amazing.
I agree,
That's
and
that's truly
and
amazing.
and I've had enough good guys in the industry when they found out that I hit a hard spot, that they were willing to either help me by having me come work for them till I could get on my feet or whatever, or I mean, I was fired on the 8th of May, and by the 10th of May I had 2 service jobs already lined up. And so I take that as I s- I have put enough good out there and helped people and tried to take care of people and care about them, that when push came to shove, they also tried to reciprocate that as much as they could. So
Wow.
that's one of the biggest things I can say I can take from my experience in the industry
That is a
is
great lesson.
it's a small industry and everybody knows everybody's business.
It's true. It is true, and everybody kinda makes circles and word gets around, so that's
Exactly.
that's really good. So, I mean, I'm sure we could all make assumptions, but what kind of customers do you typically serve? So small shops, startups, big manufacturers?
I've helped I do a lot of startups and a lot of small shops. Big boys haven't been able to get in the door with them, but a lot of them, they also are pretty ingrained with the builders, the manufacturers, the dealers of the machines that they have, because a lot of the bigger shops have kind of started to homogenize on a brand or a
Yeah.
couple of brands. And and honestly, some of the dealers that I know, they focus a lot of their time and efforts on those guys because they buy a lot of equipment from them.
Yeah, I can speak
And
from
so
personal experience if that's the truth, but I don't know if you're missing out on that much, man.
I
The
would
big
much
guys, they play money with paying their bills, they
yes,
play all these weird games because 'cause they're always trying to cook their books and trying to make what this quarter's gotta look good, so we're gonna push out and, you know,
yep,
eh, being on my end, I've seen personally, right? You're looking at this big manufacturer and you're like, "Oh, they're on credit hold. Why are they?"
yep,
And as a matter of fact, I worked for one for a while. Same thing. I would call, order a tool, and they'd be like, "Sorry, you can't order a tool because you're on credit hold." And I'd be like, "Why are we on credit hold?"
yep,
And I have to reach out to somebody like, "Oh, well, we're not paying that bill because we're trying to wait until next quarter."
mhm,
So and it's like there's
yep.
people whose livelihood depends on that. So
And in all honesty, I agree with you. I don't I don't have the resources to be able to handle some of the big shops and
mhm.
some of the requirements or the needs that they have. Um, but more than that, I'd much rather deal with a guy that owns his shop. He's got 2 or 3 machines, and he's got a couple people working for him, because I know that I can, if there's something wrong, I can call him up, say, "Hey, man, did you miss this invoice or what's going on?" And I can work with them or they can work with me, and we can make stuff happen while making it a win-win for everybody. I'm not interested in the big corporate BS that goes on sometimes, like what you were describing.
Yeah, and not to belabor this point too much, but do still think, unlike a lot of industries, I think when it comes to machine shops and manufacturing houses, I think the future is still pretty safe with the small guys because
Yep.
if What I've done for the past 8 years has showed me is that the small guys are much more efficient with much
Yep.
less.
Yep.
Because anytime you go into one of these big shops, the bureaucracy and the management, and it seems like you got five managers for one guy actually doing work. The efficiency is just not even remotely close to what you see the smaller shops doing. And there's a few examples around the valley here that you know do it right, but the bigger job shops are pretty few and far between.
Yep.
And it seems to be the smaller guys who are actually making the difference. And
Yep.
they stay agile and productive and seem to be making money. So
Well, as our friend Nick Peterson says, is that the small guys, they're usually the ones that give a shit about what they're doing and how they do things. Big
absolutely.
companies, as long as they're making, as long as they're making their quarterly profits or whatever, they don't really care.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Um, so what's your current marketing process?
Right now, it's I'm trying to be more active on social media, primarily LinkedIn and Instagram, and just put stuff out there. I haven't I haven't put a lot of pictures out there in terms of like jobs I'm working on. There's a guy on LinkedIn that I follow. His name's Andrew Forbes, and he's back east. He's got a machine service company as well, and he shows a lot of these projects that him or his guys are working on, and and I'd like to be able to show more of that because it shows how interesting just the machines in our industry can be, much less any parts that we work on. Um, but honestly, I forget to take pictures along the way, other than if I'm trying to get a serial number off of something or go, oh, I gotta take a picture of that part so I can find it.
It's hard, man, and
Hmm.
you have to be intentional with
Yep.
it. But fortunately enough, there's not. I mean, I don't know if you have at least in the valley, if you have a ton of competition. So fortunately enough for you, like word of mouth and just being an all around good guy is, probably keeps you pretty busy.
It really does. I am uh, part of what I'm working towards. So right now we focus at Greenlight. We're just focusing primarily on service and applications type work.
Mhm.
Um, but I want to also get to where we can offer new machine solutions to people. But it's hard in that regard because as soon as you start selling a brand exclusively or whatever, people's guard goes up. It's like, oh, he's working on this machine, and now he's going to go into some kind of a sales pitch on the
Yeah.
machines that he's
Yeah,
got,
exactly.
and I don't want to do that. I want it to be one of those things where I want it to be one of those things where when a shop owner is looking to expand, uh, I'm the first person, or that Greenlight's the first company that they think of because they've had such good experience with us. I want them to think of us first because they've had such good experience and we've treated them well enough that they'll be like, hey, we're looking at buying another machine. What do you have? Because we know that you'll take care of it.
Well, that's a good
Um,
approach, right? To
yep,
have the service that you're there to help everybody out, but you also, carry whatever brand on the back end. So
yep.
no, I I think your approach is excellent. So
Thank you.
all right. So for those outside your territory, because what is your
Yep.
territory?
I will, if you've got service work or machines, I'm more than happy to go Utah, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, and Colorado.
Okay.
Though I'll tell you, if it's the Denver area, I might steer clear of that.
Why is that?
Just it's I've been there in the last couple of years, and I've got some friends over there, and they've had trucks broken into, tools stolen, and
Yeah.
different things like that. And it's like I'm not interested in having that happen. I already have a hard enough time dealing with insurance companies paying me for repairs on machines. I don't need to wait for them to reimburse me for tools and stuff that get stolen.
Yeah, I'm from Denver, so I know I kind of know what you're talking about. Um, so for those outside your territory, right? What kind of recommendations do you have for individuals that may be listening to this and looking for somebody else who does what you do?
Um, hmm, I'd be looking first and foremost at their at what experience they bring to the table. If you're looking for like an independent machine repair guy, my friend Aaron Morrill does it. He goes by, sorry, can I
Yeah,
plug him? He
sure.
goes by CNC Repairman on Instagram.
I actually
And
think I just started following him.
Aaron is genuinely one of the best human beings I know. And he grew up, his dad started a company doing machine tool service, and he's grown up around it, so he's very, very knowledgeable. He spent a lot of time on Haas, and that's kind of what he focuses on, especially for his CNC replacement parts business, is the Haas stuff. But he works on everything. And the thing that I take away from Aaron is I see the experience that he has, and how he works with people, and his willingness to help them over the phone, or whatever, even for what might be considered dumb little things.
Hmm.
Tells me that he's somebody I want to do business with, because he's going to be honest and he's going to be square with me. Um, when it comes to, like, say, looking for used machines or something like that, you gotta be careful, because some of the used dealers are kind of like used car salesmen.
Oh yeah.
Um, but a lot of times, if you can find a good machine service guy, uh, they can look at equipment for you and give you an honest assessment of it, of whether or not it's good. One of the things that I'll tell people when I look at machines for them is, it's like, no, if I was looking at buying a used machine, I wouldn't have any hesitation buying this one. Or I look at them and go, I wouldn't touch this one with a 10-foot pole. Steer clear of this beast.
Yeah, yeah. Well, actually, that segues perfectly in kind of our next section of this. So our next section, we're trying to talk about individuals who may be, let's say you have your own product and you're looking at bringing your manufacturing in house, or
Uh-huh.
you just want to kind of start a small machine shop in your garage, or just start out on your own. So, from your perspective, what is the smartest way for someone to start a small shop on a budget?
Um, Honestly, for looking at used machines, rather than looking at the used machine dealers, I'd start with something like Craigslist, or like here in the Valley, KSL.com, or like a local classified. Um, and part of the reason why I'd start there is because a lot of times you're just dealing directly with the shop owners or something like that. You're not dealing with a middleman sales company and stuff. And so you'll be able to get a little bit better information from the owners, most likely. Um, Man,
I
that's
think
that's
that's a
a
good point
that's
because I think you get really good deals too.
yes.
Because the used guys are going to be trying to market, right? They got to get their cut out
They
of it,
yeah, they got to
So
make
they're going to try
margin
to
on the
buy it for
sale.
as little as they possibly can and sell it for as much as they possibly can, right? So just like a used car salesman, and not to disparage them at all, right? They
No,
got to make
no.
money too, doing what they do, and a
Yep,
lot of times they'll buy equipment and sit on it for, they'll put it in their warehouse somewhere and they have to
yep.
sit on it and they have to fix it if it's broken, and
Oh yeah.
sometimes they take a risk and they'll buy something and never even sell it just because it's for whatever reason. So
Yep.
it's understandable.
Absolutely. And there's only really two used dealers that I work with, um, both to I bring them up, try to bring them opportunities on machines
Mhm.
to buy. But they're also the only ones that I really point people to, because they have dealt very squarely with me. And that's another thing in our industry, is that if you deal squarely and shoot straight with people, generally speaking, you get word of mouth and you pick up business that way. But man, if you ever, you know, do anything a little shady with somebody, everybody knows.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, there's only two used dealers that I work with. because like I said, they've treated me pretty squarely.
Good.
So,
If someone has $100,000 or less to get a small shop rolling, where do you think they should prioritize their money?
um, hmm, I lean a little bit more toward if you can spend a little bit more up front with the machine. Um, and part of that's my nature because I work on them. But really, yeah, the machine and the tooling for the machine are going to be the that's your money makers.
Mhm.
And so if you're on a 100K budget, I'd lean toward finding a good, later model machine and invest in some good tooling for it, because you should be able to make enough to pick up, more metrology equipment and whatnot like that later on. But if you buy some old, 2,000 or $5,000 machine that's had the hell beat out of it, and it's hard to find parts for or whatever, you're going to be hurt down the road because you're going to end up nickel and dime. The machine will nickel and dime you.
Well, especially if your business depends on the ability of that spindle to
Exactly.
keep running, you
Yep.
know?
If you're starting it up in your garage, and it's not what you're having to depend on for making your mortgage payment and stuff, okay, you could maybe skimp out on the machine a little bit. But if it's going to be what you have to pay bills with,
Mhm.
yeah, definitely invest a little more money up front in the machine.
Got it. So, to follow up from that, from your perspective, you've been around a lot of shops throughout the years. What are the biggest mistakes that you see new shop owners making when it comes to equipment purchases or where they're investing their energy?
Um, well, on machine purchases, a lot of people I've seen in the industry, um, they've bought the used Haas because you can find them everywhere.
Mhm.
But it's one that, oh, my buddy knows this guy and I got this great deal on it. Well, that's fine, but the machine's 1998, and you can't get the control parts for it
Mhm.
anymore from Haas. And there are some companies that do repairs, but sometimes they can't even repair the board. And so it's like, if that goes down, if you have that problem,
It's
that's
a boat anchor.
yeah, it's a boat anchor. Or you got to drop 25 grand and have Haas come out and put a new control on it. Um, I hate to say it, but in some ways, a machine that's got like a Fanuc or a Mitsubishi may be a little better off because they've got good support for even some of their really old controls.
Yeah, even Akuma does. They do pretty good with that stuff.
Exactly.
All
Um,
right.
yeah.
How should a new shop owner think about balancing capability versus cost when buying their first machines?
Um, well, I guess part of that depends on how the shop is marketing itself,
Mhm.
um, and how aggressively they are able to sell themselves and their capabilities. So I was listening to a podcast a couple weeks ago, and the fellow that was being interviewed was the owner of a machine dealership back in Ohio, and the two hosts of the show were machine shop owners.
Mhm.
And the question was posed to the dealership owner. He's like, "What do you do? Do you try and bring in the work and then buy the machine to fit that work, or do you buy the machine that's got the capabilities and then go out and bring work in?"
Mhm.
And the thing that he pointed out, he says, in the 25 years that I've been running this dealership, he says the shops that are willing to jump out and make the investment in the machine and the capabilities are also the same ones that are able to go out, sell themselves, and bring the work in for the machine. Because if you've got the capabilities, it seems to open up more doors than saying, well, we'll buy a machine to match your work. companies that are out there looking for somebody don't want to take that risk. They would rather see that you already have the capability to do the work and then give it to you.
Yeah, I guess just elaborate on that or add to it, you probably need to also consider your capability, right?
Exactly.
Like, do
No,
you even
that's
have
that's
the
a
ability, right?
legitimate thing.
Yeah, do you even have the ability to run a multi-axis machine, or right now is your skill level kind of limited to a three-axis mill or a two-axis lathe? And if that's fine if it is,
Yep.
just work with what you got. So,
As Clint Eastwood said, a man's got to know his limitations.
that's right. That's right. Okay. Well, we're going to move on to some do's and don'ts of buying used equipment. So we've already kind of skirted this, but what are your top 3 to 5 do's and don'ts when buying used machines?
Number one of the do's, definitely pay the money and have a legit machine inspection done
Yeah,
on it.
I think so.
Um, if you have to, if you're buying the machine from somewhere, say back east or out of state for you, try and find um, a machine service company like mine that they're willing to go in and inspect the machine. And I know it'll cost you, it'll cost you $1,000, $1,500 or whatever. But if you're getting ready to drop, 20, 30, $40,000 on a used machine, that thousand or $1,500 of having somebody go and do a legit inspection on it could potentially save you a lot more if the
Oh,
machine looks good,
yeah.
in the pictures. Think of it like buying a house that way. It
Hmm.
looks good in the pictures, but then when you start walking through or you've got somebody looking, it's like, yeah, the roof leaks here and there's some funky things going on with some plumbing over here. You might want to be aware of this before you pull the trigger on it.
Well, I mean, trust me, just as much as anybody, I like to save a buck, but
Hmm.
when that is the lifeline of your business, right? The ability of that spindle to keep going and to keep running and to, whether your business is productive or not, right? You want to mitigate as many risks as you possibly can. So,
100%. 100%. So that's my number one on the dues. Next thing I would say on the dues, if you're able to go and look at it yourself, you go look at it, meet the person that's selling it, talk to him, get a feel for him.
mhm.
Um, because it might, like I said, it might look good on paper and even the inspection might look good. But if you're, there's a lot to be said about the gut feeling you get when you talk to somebody.
Yeah.
Um, and let's see here. I'm trying to think if there's anything else on the when buying used machines, what I would do. Mm, I may have to come back to that.
Mm,
So
I'm sure some more stuff will come up during this conversation. So, with that being said, how about the don'ts?
the don'ts, don't buy a machine that's coming out of a foundry.
Okay, yeah, that's probably a good one.
I say that because a lot of the machines I've worked on that have been in foundries they've been run hard, put away wet, and yeah, they're only worth the scrap iron that they are.
Yeah,
Um, but on the don'ts, yeah, just don't skimp out on don't if you've got two machines and one's 5 years newer, but there's only a couple $1,000 or $5,000 difference between that one and the other one you're looking at. Just if you can, if I'd say spend the extra 5 grand because usually the newer one you'll be able to get better parts support, better service support, and and don't go for the if you're looking and you see some weird off-brand machine that you've never heard of and you have a hard time even finding information on them online, but it's only a $10,000 machine, don't do it.
yeah,
Don't do it. There's I've got a customer up in Idaho that it wasn't even an off brand. It was one of the big players in the industry. And they bought it because it was supposed to be this really cool 5-axis horizontal machine that had all these capabilities, and it's really cool, but there's only two of them in the States, and the manufacturer has just kind of dropped off when it comes to helping them figure out why it will only run about 10 or 15% of the time. And I mean, they dropped, almost $1 million on the machine when they bought it. And
Wow.
and so it's like, sometimes the capabilities that get advertised, look, find out how many of those machines they actually have in service.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, that once again, I'll play off that a little bit and add to your don'ts. Be weary of machines that have too much custom stuff on them, right? Custom
Hmm.
options, custom air chucks, custom tool
Yes.
breakage detection systems. Cause I mean, all that stuff is flashy and fancy when it's new, but there's software typically running on it. There's all kinds of systems running on the back end
Yep.
that if it typically on when all that stuff starts aging and all that complexity, it just makes it a nightmare to deal with all that stuff.
Yep.
Right. And we've had personally, I've dealt with a few customers who, they bought into the flash. They're like, oh, I'm getting this super fancy, awesome machine. But the thing was 15 plus years old and just been running into the ground. And yeah, it was
Yep.
great when it was new and it had all these super high tech features on it at the time. But now all that stuff was just causing roadblocks to the machine actually just
Yep.
doing what you needed it to do on a daily basis. So
Yep.
probably a big don't, and maybe even a do, is just it's okay to buy complex, multi-axis or multi-spindle machines, but just make
Yep.
sure it's more of a mainstream version of it, so
Yep.
to speak. Not necessarily some one-off or they tried this this option one time or they, like you said, there's two versions of this machine in the entire country, you know, definitely steer clear of things like that.
Yep. I know more machinists that as cool as it would be to have the fancy, high tech, really cool, flashy machine. A good blocking and tackling machine is you're going to be able to do more with that,
Yeah,
um,
exactly.
and get better support for it.
Well,
I
yeah,
know I keep saying stuff about support, but that's really a
it's
huge
important.
thing right now. Part
Every
of
shop, and that's what makes when even when I was when I'm working for distributors, the main reason that people come back to isn't necessarily, hey, this machine produced. I mean, yeah, it has a lot to do with it, but it has just as much to do with the support that you get with the piece of equipment you're going to buy. Like if this thing
yep,
breaks, how fast can you be there to help me get it back up and running? Because once again, the lifeblood of your business is that the spindle's ability to just keep going day in and day out. So
yep. I know it's something that we say a lot in the industry, but there's I can't overstate the truth in it is that sales may sell the first machine, but service sells all the rest of them.
absolutely. Absolutely. So how do you spot a machine that's been babied versus one that's been run into the ground?
If it's a mill, first thing I'm looking at is the table. No vices, no nothing on it. I want to see what the table looks like.
Got
Because
it.
generally, if a machine's been babied, you'll see minimal marks in
Yeah.
it, so to speak, where they've overshot and cut into their table. That's a big one. I look at the way covers and see, are they smashed all to hell? Have they got lots of dents and like not just like little dents that come from normal wear and tear, but I mean, does it look like, they threw a 40-pound part off the table and it smashed the crap out of the way covers.
Mhm.
Um, I also look at the nose of the spindle, and the drive dogs to see, does it look like it's been smashed into? Does it have like, you know what an impact looks like if in on metal and how it deforms and whatnot. I look for stuff like that. I don't necessarily look at the paint on the inside of the enclosure just because, man, sometimes if you're running I've seen this where like running a full synthetic coolant and not staying right on top of its It's mix and whatnot. Sometimes that stuff will react with paint and it'll cause the paint to bubble off and 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 cause you problems there. But mostly I'm looking for signs of impact. I'm looking for signs of neglect. I'll look at, I'll go and look around and see, okay, does this look like it's leaking coolant from around parts of the sheet metal? Does it look like there's chips that are packed in everywhere? And,
Hmm.
you know, I look for just signs of general upkeep. If I go into a shop and I see a machine and it looks like it's been, wiped down regularly, not like they're just standing there wiping the machine down all day or whatever, but you know what it looks like when you've got an inch of crap that builds up on the machines and you can't wipe it off
Oh
with
yeah.
a rag. You've got to bring in, degreaser and stuff to clean it. Those are just some of the things I look at to see what what kind of what kind of maintenance was done on the machine.
So are there, you kind of brought this up earlier, and I guess we can
Hmm.
kind of continue on. Are there certain brands that you think are better, as far as either holding up long term, or you have a much higher likelihood of getting repair parts? Maybe brands to steer towards versus things to avoid. And I know we've kind of already brought up, like you said if it's some weird off brand machine, avoid it. Do you have any other input around that?
Um, a little bit. I want to be careful how I say this because I don't want people to think I'm crapping on one brand or another or anything like that. Haas, they've got a huge market share and you can generally get most parts for them pretty readily.
Yeah.
There are some electronics that are, like I mentioned earlier, the processors on some of them you can't really get anymore. But I mean, if you're just starting out and you're learning, a Haas really is a good option because they're relatively inexpensive.
I agree.
And if and I'll be honest, if I smash the crap out of a Haas machine versus out of a really nice, Mori or Kitamura or something like that, I'm gonna be a lot more pissed at myself if I smash up the Mori or the Kitamura. The Haas,
Mhm.
okay, we'll call that a whoopsie and
Yeah, it's like
move
a
on with it.
it's like your first car when you're learning to
Yeah,
drive.
yep, exactly. I would say, one of the things to look at is, well, let me back up. Machines that hold up better long term are usually ones that end up costing a little bit more upfront. Like your older Moris, your Doosan's, your Okumas, Makinos, Kitamuras, like they are built really well, very heavy. Did I already say Doosan or
Mhm.
no?
Yeah, you
Okay,
said do so.
okay. I've worked on some of those and they're just solid performers. And yeah, it's a boring control and it's a boring machine, but they hold up really well. Hawses, if they're taken care of and not and somebody doesn't try to run them like a Mori, um, they generally will hold up all right as well. So
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there making money
and
with houses.
and I'll tell you, too, don't be afraid of Taiwanese machines. I'm surprised at how many guys in our industry are still like, nah, it's from Taiwan. I don't want to touch it. Like the Taiwanese, that's where some of the most complex and high end semiconductors and microchips in the world are built.
Yeah,
And
you
you
took the
don't
words right out of my mouth.
and you don't do that by having a crappy machine tool industry. Like you
Nope.
have to have solid quality machines.
Yeah.
And yes, they buy some from Japan. Like I will freely admit that the Japanese and I would say the Germans probably have the corner on the market for some of the highest end, highest precision machines in the world. But again, the Taiwanese, man, they build a lot of their own machines to support their industries,
Well,
and
and the
I've been
Koreans, like
impressed
we
with them.
see with
Oh
with
yeah, and the
Doosan.
South
So
Koreans.
yeah,
I don't find as many people being hesitant about buying the Korean machines. I mean, everybody
yeah.
knows Doosan, DN Solutions. There's the Huaqians, which are I've found to be really good quality machines. DMC. A lot of guys haven't heard of them, but they've built a lot of machines for other more well-known brands, and they're solid. So don't be afraid of buying some of those machines like that.
Yeah, I've been really interested to they market pretty well, but I don't see a lot of them around, those smart machines.
So Smart, I know a little bit about them. The They are originally based out, or their owners are Dick Lale and Nick Lale, and Dick actually owns a company called Dynamic Machine out in Wisconsin. He's a machine tool dealer out there.
Oh, okay.
Um, they they own a factory in South Korea building turning centers,
Mhm.
and most of the guys I've talked to say they're pretty solid, pretty well built. Um, but most of their other machines they're white labeled for Smart by other builders in Taiwan or in South Korea or whatever.
Got it.
And overall, they seem to be all right machines.
Mhm.
It seems like he's shooting or it's like they're shooting to go after the Haas market. I mean, some of the pricing on some of their mills and stuff. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's insane.
that's
That's why I
Haas
was
market.
interested because I was like saw I think it was like 45 grand for a 40 taper little mill,
Yeah,
and I was like, "Geez."
and again, the only thing I would say is like that. Be aware of what kind of support you can get
Mhm.
for them. But all the shops I've been into that have them seem to like them, and and most of them are just a basic block and tackle kind of machine.
Yeah, which that can make you money too.
Exactly.
So what's I mean, once again, we've already kind of covered a couple of these. Do you have any additional red flags that buyers should never ignore?
If the big one I would say is if the machine has linear guides on it, and then also, and I bring this up also for the ball screws, but if it seems like it's the only way they're going to know this is either if they get it inspected or they check it themselves. But if the ball screws, if you grab onto them and everything comes off just black, you have like black lines. It's not good clear oil, but it looks more like it's just black or gray. I'd steer clear of that because that usually means that the ball screws and the ways might have been or the
Right.
linear guides are starved for lube, and they're wearing through each other.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a good one.
so that's that, and then I would say if you can see like big damage to sheet metal enclosure on the outside of the machine, I think those are two big red flags to steer clear of.
Mhm. So the next section we have here, we're going to talk about just additional considerations.
Hmm.
What advice do you have when considering long-term service and maintenance, right? How should someone who's buying a machine kind of prepare for that, keep that in the back of their mind? I mean, obviously
Mm,
maintenance has been important for anything. Do you just have any
yep.
additional insight on that? Things to always make sure you're staying up on?
Big thing is your lubrication. That's one of the main failing points I see guys have problems with on their machines is just if stuff doesn't get lubricated properly, and I mean that getting the right amount of lubrication, that causes more problems than about anything else. That and then clean power, uh,
Mm,
like power coming in to feed the machine. Um, if you, I want to tell people to always have some kind of a transformer or something between the power coming in and the machine. And the only reason I say that is because the transformers a lot of times seem to help smooth out power coming into the machine.
yeah, that's a good point.
Because Rocky Mountain Power, if you're over in Cache Valley, Logan City Power, and some of the other power authorities, as it were, here, they just it's crappy power coming in, and that I've seen crappy power coming into machines, and it's fried processors, it's fried servo drives, and I mean those aren't inexpensive things, not only for the cost of the component to replace it, but also the cost of the downtime, the cost of having somebody come in and do the service and get everything working. Like your power coming in, that's a big one.
So moral of that story is even if the power coming into your building matches the power requirement of the machine,
Yep.
still consider getting a transformer. Just
Yep.
'cause it's not
Exactly.
worth.
It's not worth the risk there.
Yeah, that's a good
And
one.
also, don't be afraid to spend good money on an air compressor or on an air system, I should say. Um, you know, that's another big one that causes problems is not having air that is clean and dry
Mhm.
coming into your machines. That causes a lot of problems too. Um, but your regular service and maintenance, get an annual PM done. And I say that as a guy that makes part of my living off of doing PMs on machines.
Yeah,
But regularly schedule downtime to look over the machine to get it checked out. Because it's a lot easier to deal with planned downtime than unexpected downtime.
absolutely. How important would you say it is to obtain a copy of the manuals when you're buying a machine, like a used machine?
On a Haas, probably not nearly as much as other brands, but anything that's running a Fanuc, a Mitsubishi, or a Heidenhain Siemens controls, it's critical. And
Yeah,
and the reason I say that is like for me as an independent, when I come in to work on a machine, one of the first things I do is look for manuals because a lead well and a feeler and a Mori and a Doosan and an Okuma are all going to be wired differently internally. It's not like there's a standard uh, wiring scheme in a machine. And sometimes even you could have the same brand and um, the same brand and same model of a machine, but they're 10 years apart. You can have differences in the way that things are wired and set up. And so having a parts manual and having an electrical manual that also has like your a printed version of the machine ladder.
yeah, the wiring
Those
diagrams
yeah,
and
the
the
wiring
wires.
diagrams, like that is absolutely critical to have for every one of your machines.
So the moral of the story is if you're buying something used, put every amount of effort that you can into tracking those things down. Don't just
Yep.
buy the machine and not even think about the manuals.
Yep.
So
If the customer doesn't have a copy of the manuals, most manufacturers are pretty good about providing them. You might have to spend a couple $100 and you'll get a PDF version, but you absolutely need copies of manuals for your machines.
well, great. So I guess kind of closing up here, what advice would you give machinists or small business owners who's dreaming of starting their own shop?
Um, Try not to think it's all going to be sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah, trust me, I've seen
That's
that.
that's the big one. I know that. So I had started my own little machine shop while I was still working for the Haas dealer,
Mhm.
and I thought, oh yeah, this will be great. I can start doing this and be able to do that. And then, yeah, it never works out that way. Be real about it. Don't don't set your expectations unreasonably high. But aside from that, go after it. Do it.
Yeah.
Um, like we need more manufacturers. We need more guys that are willing to jump out there and take the risk to start something and do something. Don't be afraid to fail.
Well, and
Um,
I think, that's one of the major goals of this podcast, right? Is to give advice. And there's a lot of guys out there who do well and they're working for somebody else and they're working
yep,
either in a big corporate shop or they have in the back of their head, I can do this, right? And we just want to give out good advice and encourage people to follow the path correctly, and give them as many tools as they can to be successful. Um, like you and I, and I'm going to start sounding like a broken record when it comes to this, but marketing, right?
yep.
We were talking before we started recording just how important marketing.
Oh, it is. And being able to and think about it this way too for the guys that want to start the shops or guys selling machines or whatever. Marketing, it's critical because it's
the demographic of people coming into the industry are shifting, and they get a lot more of their information off of Instagram, off of LinkedIn, off of company websites and stuff, rather than necessarily relying on the old model of a sales rep coming in and talking to them every few weeks.
Yes.
And I think being able to do both, being able to go in and talk to people face to face, but also having a good presence on social media, and showing what you can do, what you have to offer, the value. That's the big thing. What value you can bring to your customers is a big thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for your time, Will. Go ahead and
You're
let the
welcome. Thanks for
listeners
having
know.
me.
Yeah, oh yeah, I loved it. This was great. I think this is perfect. So go ahead and let the listeners know where they can learn more about you and Greenlight Machinery. So go ahead and have all your info.
I don't have a great website set up, so I'm not going to point you there, but you can email me at service@greenlightmachinery.com, or you can reach me on the phone at 435-274-8998. I'm always happy to help.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today, and thank you for joining the Machine Tool Maniacs podcast.